Good evening. Welcome back to Factorio. Several years ago, I started a playthrough of Factorio space exploration, and in this video, I'm gonna finish it. That's right, boyos, today we maximize shareholder value across the entire galaxy, progressing through advanced technologies like orbital bombardment, spaceships, energy weapons, space elevators, high-power machinery, antimatter, bioengineered plague, this machine that gives you autism if you look at it, manipulating the very fabric of space-time itself, and the most advanced technology of all, talking to women. Nah, just kidding, we couldn't figure that one out. To beat this mod, we need to unlock these technologies and use them to build a spaceship that can fly all the way back to our home galaxy. However, fucking everything in this mod is trying to kill you, or drive you insane, or confuse you to the point of total organ failure. So to help me with this endeavor, I've once again employed my good friends, Ben and Tristan. So, let us begin. So, the elephant in the room. Mart, why has it been over 2 years since the last Factorio video? That's a great question. Oh my god, what's that over there? In part 1, we spent 100 hours building this wonderful factory, flooded the local public housing, used hundreds of balance of parts, and launched our first rocket into space. In part 2, we did an epic gamer move called restarting. Spent 44 hours on day 1, not sure how we did that, flew into space, built some outposts on other planets, and spent another 100 hours building this wonderful factory. At the end of that video, we left off right here on the planet Agni, just before we walked into this mysterious little pyramid full of renters. And this was where that video ended. And I didn't play Factorio again for over 2 years. I was busy. 2 years later, while rewatching Avatar 2, I realized that the humans were playing Factorio, and it was firing me up. Torch that fucking forest! Yes! Build turrets and walls! Yes! Kill those blue freaks! Yes! Dude, shut up. Oh, I'm sorry. And for the first time in years that night, I fired up Factorio. Gentlemen, it was time for a tour. We've got the main area and the big boy bus, mines and production facilities connected together with a rail network, supersonic trains zipping around at supersonic speeds, a BBW protecting us from the disgusting, unwashed proletariat, this rocket launch area for launching rockets into your mom, these perfect nuclear reactors powering everything with no flaws whatsoever, the base in space, 2 bases on other planets, and most importantly, the Zaza. This tour left me feeling concerned. You see, this factory took over 100 hours to build and could make 8 science packs. Pretty respectable, but if we wanted to build that intergalactic spaceship, we'd have to automate all the science packs. Gentlemen, it was time to expand. Energy science, the target of our next grand expansion. So I plonked down a manufactory to see how we make it, and died from lack of brain. Every one of these mid-game science packs needs 4 unique data cards. Energy Science 1 needs polarization data in a laser facility, which I can make, radiation data in a radiation facility, which I can make, and electromagnetic field data in an electromagnetics facility, which I can also make. Are you still following me? The final card, conductivity data, is also made in an electromagnetics facility. It takes a bunch of items that we can already make, and holmium plates. And this is where it gets a little silly. Holmium plates are made from holmium ingots, which are made from molten holmium, which is made from holmium powder, which is made from holmium chloride, which is made from crushed holmium, which is made from holmonite ore. Holmonite ore, as you can probably guess, is nowhere to be found on our home planet Norvis. So I hopped into a rocket, flew over to a new planet, Ninlil, mined holmonite, crushed it into crushed holmonite, and of course, turned the crushed holmonite into holmium chloride, shipped the holmium chloride back to Norvis, made the holmium chloride into holmium powder, melted the holmium powder into holmium liquid, cast the holmium liquid into holmium ingots, put them on a train, took them off a train, onto a belt, into a delivery cannon, shot them into space, made them into plates, put those plates into an electromagnetics facility making conductivity data. The 4 data cards we made can now be combined in a computer to make an energy catalog. That energy catalog can be made into energy insight. Are you still following me? That insight into significant data, and what do you know? We can make energy science 1. Well, that only took, what, 14 hours? I think I'm gonna kill myself! Speaking of killing myself, Ben. Him and I had been extremely busy expanding, constructing, synergizing, and maximizing stakeholder value. But beneath our feet, something had been brewing. And no, I'm not talking about the log in the toilet. Uranium. About 50 hours ago, this uranium mine ran out. I knew it ran out, Ben knew it ran out, but we didn't do anything about it. Why? Well, we had somewhere on the order of 50 bajillion uranium stored in these 2 warehouses. However, our factory used approximately 1 bajillion uranium per hour, so over the course of 50 hours, the warehouses had been depleted. Wait. Uh-oh.
Wait. This is bad.
As the factory entered into a power death spiral, Ben and I then saw something much worse. In exactly 2 minutes, the sun would do a little trolling. And the only way to defend ourselves was pumping 2 gigawatts of power into this umbrella defense. We had precisely 0.
There's no fucking power. I can't reprocess the fuel. Fuck! No! Fuck! This could not have come at a worse time. No, boss. The Bosch! No, the Bosch has been destroyed.
The first one.
Oh. Bruh. Oh my god.
And there it is.
With the base now medium rare, we had to find a way to switch the whole machine back on again, which proved to have several problems. Problem 1, no power. Problem 2, no uranium. Problem 3, to make power we need uranium. And problem 4, to mine uranium we need power. This is what the professionals call a bit of a pickle. So, while Ben got to work building a new uranium mine, I scratched my head trying to figure out how to switch the power back on. And then it came to me. Nuclear fuel reprocessing. During the Colonial Mass Ejection Sun Ass Blast 9000, I had managed to scrounge together 20 whole fuel cells. Now this wouldn't be enough to jumpstart the factory, so I built this. A small setup for centrifuging spent nuclear fuel cells back into uranium. To power it, I used these solar panels. And once I made some uranium, I turned that into fuel cells, and threw those fuel cells into the reactors. This did exactly nothing, because these reactors had a fundamental design flaw. The pumps pumping water into the heat exchangers share power with the rest of the factory. So if the factory is dead, the pumps are dead. This was no longer a bit of a pickle. This was a lot of a pickle. Not to worry, because we had 2 other small nuclear reactors just lying around, and these ones had pumps on separate power networks. So once I switched these on, the roboports were able to charge back up, and the main reactors in the lake could turn on. However, we were then presented with a brand new pickle. Despite all the reactors being on at full bore, the factory was still fucked. The delivery cannons didn't know when to stop shooting, and the rockets thought it would be a great idea to fill themselves with random bullshit.
Oh my god, what the fuck?
A full rocket load of random bullshit is a lot of resources, which made the rest of the factory tick on, and soon enough everything was running at full power and the reactors couldn't keep up.
This is a fucking disaster.
This was no longer a lot of a pickle. This was an ostrobogulous sum of pickle. Too much pickle for the feeble human mind to comprehend. The solution was simple. Build another reactor. This, however, was complicated by our good friend Tristan, who, at that exact moment, decided it would be funny to join the game, hop into a motor vehicle, and plow it through all of our nuclear reactor equipment. Tristan, what the fuck did you do to them all? Dude, I'm gonna fucking kill you! This added substantially to the already ostrobogulous sum of pickle, creating a pickle singularity collapsing into itself and destroying the known universe. But, lucky for Tristan, we did in fact have some spare reactor parts lying around. And finally, the power was back on.
Oh, yes.
Come on, yes, there we go.
The mine was built, and uranium was flowing once again.
We're back.
We're so back.
Did I end up fixing the fundamental design flaw of the nuclear reactors? No. Like any good engineer, I scaled it up and pretended the problem didn't exist. A problem I couldn't ignore, however, was Tristan.
Listening to NBA Youngboy.
Yup. It turns out Tristan has been quite the antagonizer over the last several hundred hours. And quite frankly, I'd had enough. Now yes, there was always the option of shooting him in the face, but 10 seconds later he'd respawn and continue on his merry way. I wanted something a bit more permanent. Yo, Trista, come to the rocket area. I want to expand to a new planet.
Alright. Robots, can we do that?
Alright, Tristo. Hop in the rocket.
This one?
This rocket. We're gonna expand to a brand new planet, okay?
I'm in.
Alright. See ya.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Alright, bye. Fuck. Dude. Oh no. The fuck?
Your brand new world, Tristan. Your brand new little playground.
Oh my god.
And with the great antagonizer dealt with once and for all, I could finally relax. Of course, the relaxation didn't last very long when I remembered we had literally only made one new science pack out of 20. With my sleep schedule getting steadily more abused, I moved on to Energy Science 2 and 3, which didn't need any new resources. Just a whole bunch more space and 12 new data cards. Rest assured, it was painful. Energy Science 4 was still out of reach behind Astronomic Science, and I didn't want to do that yet. Instead, I wanted to get my dirty little mitts on Piss Science Advanced. Or Material Science, I guess. So, imagine that whole rigmarole fuckamagee that we just did to get Energy Science. Well, we have to do all of that, all over again, this time with Iridium instead of Holmium. So, it's time to lock in. The closest source of iridium ore is on this planet Silverhorn. I took a quick flight there on Delta Airlines, which thought it would be funny if we landed in the fucking creek. Mined Iridite, crushed Iridite, shipped the crushed shit back to Norvis, built this huge machine for processing that crushed shit, first into iridium powder, that powder into iridium blast cake, but oh wait, sorry fucko, iridium blast cake needs enriched vulcanite. That's an intermediate product in vulcanite production that we can only make on the planet Agni. So I went to Agni, built yet another rocket, loaded it up with enriched vulcanite, flew that shit back to Norvis, added it to the rail network, made that blast cake. Can I eat the blast cake? What? No. Turned that blast cake into ingots, shot the ingots into space, made those ingots into plates, made data cards, then catalogs, insight, significant data, and finally, science packs. Material Science 1, then 2, and 3, and then 4. And that only took 20 hours. All this factory building was stressing me out, but luckily for me, this was precisely when I ran into an old friend. A friendly biter that we'd thrown down at the very start of the game. I got close to friend, and I could have sworn he told me to quote,
"Send 2,000 biters directly to hell with the incendiary artillery."
Okay. And just like that, all my stress melted away. Kind of like this little guy's entire family. This bit of biter incineration gave me the strength to continue our galactic conquest. And next on the agenda was Astronomic Science, which yet again involved a new resource, some long-ass production chain, and 18 million different data cards. Introducing rigmarole fuckamagee number 3, beryllium. Once again, beryllium can't be found on Norvis, so into a rocket I went, flying it over to a new planet, Dionysus. However, before I could begin the refining process, I had to deal with the locals. A few dozen biter nests spread across the planet, minding their own business. Much better. With biters now eradicated on Dionysus, it was time to extract our beryllium. And at this point, I think you know the drill. First, we mine it, then we move it, crush it, squeeze it, pull it, bop it, twist it, get run over by a train, melt it, cast it, chop it, zap it, and bang! Beryllium ingots. Those beryllium ingots are loaded into a rocket, flown back to Norvis, put on a train, taken off a train, put onto a belt, put into a delivery cannon, and shot into space to make Astronomic Science. Astronomic Science uses a combination of these cool telescopes, observation frames, and of course plenty of gnomes, to make, like, observations. Or something. These observations are then combined into data cards, those data cards into catalogs, those catalogs into insight, insight into significant data, and significant data into science packs. Way! Astro Science 1, 2, and 3 got us new, fancy technologies, like the pylon substation, which has a really big electrical range, the space elevator, which can bring trains into space, and spaceships. Now, we actually already had a spaceship. This one that we found in the asteroid belt that Ben had lovingly named the Cum Wagon.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a second. With our new spaceship technology, I could upgrade the Cum Wagon and even make new ships. So I made a new ship, named it the Bug, and flew it over to Tristan's planet. Tristan, of course, stole my engine. Little bastard. Astronomic Science 4 and Energy Science 4 each needed a special data card, probe data, which is made by launching a probe in either the sun's orbit for solar probe data or in an asteroid belt for asteroid belt probe data. Using a dedicated spaceship, we can make it automatically fly to the sun, shoot off a bunch of probes, get a bunch of data, and fly back. With that automated, Astro and Energy Science 4 were only a matter of bringing it all together. And with that done, we could research the next big leap in materials processing, Naquium. So we began research, just in time for me to do this. Getting back to my corpse was easy, but shooting this rocket had done something far worse than kill me. It blew up all of our asteroid field probe data. And this is where I found out our factory had a few issues. My first thought was, let's fly back to the asteroid field and get some more data. But the ship didn't have any space probe rockets. I checked the space probe rocket manufactory and there weren't any space probe rockets because there wasn't enough aeroframe scaffold. Aeroframe scaffold is made down on Norvis and they weren't being made because we didn't have any aeroframe poles. We didn't have any aeroframe poles because we had no beryllium plates. And we didn't have beryllium plates because we didn't have beryllium ingots. On Dionysus, the beryllium rocket was completely empty because the beryllium production was completely stopped. And the beryllium production was completely stopped because there wasn't any pyroflux. There wasn't any pyroflux because we were missing vulcanite blocks. Vulcanite blocks come from this delivery cannon on Norvis, which was completely empty. Tracing the empty belt back to the train station, there were no vulcanite blocks there either. Vulcanite blocks are made on Agni, so I went over to Agni, which was working fine. The production was moving, and the rocket was full of vulcanite. The rocket was full of vulcanite, but it wasn't full of fuel. We make our liquid rocket fuel here, and the liquid rocket fuel was lacking solid rocket fuel, which was lacking coal. This chest is normally completely full of coal, so tracing this belt back to the coal mine, I found it was working just fine. But about 50 hours ago, the belt carrying the coal had been directly hit by an asteroid. The entire factory had come grinding to a halt because of one singular rock. So I fixed the coal belt, allowing solid fuel to be made, which was made into liquid rocket fuel, put into the rocket could deliver the vulcanite to the factory, the trains could take that vulcanite to the main base, the vulcanite could travel up to the delivery cannon, shot over to Dionysus, made into pyroflux, that pyroflux into beryllium ingots, those ingots back into a rocket back to Norvis, those ingots into beryllium plates, those plates into aeroframe poles, those aeroframe poles into aeroframe scaffold, that scaffold shipped into space with a train, put into probe rockets, those probe rockets into the asteroid field spaceship, that spaceship back to the asteroid field, send the probes, get the data, head back to Norvis, stick them into science packs, and finally, we could research Naquium processing. Yippee! Of course, once we researched Naquium processing, we realized that to actually process the Naquium, we'd need vitalic acid. And to get vitalic acid, we'd need biological science. Fuck. Biological science, like the rest of the sciences, needed yet another new resource called vitamelange. Luckily, a nearby moon, Alecto, was absolutely covered in vitamelange. So Ben and I loaded up on the now highly modified cum wagon and flew it over. This was the last planetary outpost we had to make, and we made sure to bring absolutely everything we could possibly want. However, we forgot just one teeny weeny little detail. Vitamelange only spawns on planets with biters, and Alecto has a lot of biters. Oh god, oh Ben, oh fuck, you made a mistake.
Oh fuck.
Bro.
How else can we do the breach, the fucking breach?
Bro, we're so fucked!
What do I need? Inserter.
Ben! Ben, I made a mistake, Ben, help!
Oh my god.
No, I'm going in. Fuck it, I'm going in. Oh no. Oh.
We can... Give me a second,
Nah.
I'm making... Oh shit.
Nah, dude,
Gotta
it's
die.
fucking over.
Oh, and yeah. Alright, shit.
Fuck. For the first time in a very long time, the biters had unionized and succeeded in keeping Alecto clean and factory free. This was fucking bullshit. The Rentoids had won this time, but their victory had awakened our landlord Wrath. And our landlord Wrath would be back soon. With biter racism at an all-time high, Ben and I got to work on the Wildlife Harmonization Initiative, proactively aligning indigenous species management with our industrial ecosystem through dynamic habitat restructuring, fostering a balanced coexistence paradigm. That's what I told the investors anyway. In reality, we were going to fucking vaporize them from orbit with several fancy new toys. So we headed back over to Alecto and began work. With a safe area cleared, we rapidly began industrializing, building a cuck box, nuclear reactor, walls, turrets, mines, and a hefty production site to extract that sweet vitamelange. Over time, the orbital death rays would automatically target biter nests, gradually clearing the entire planet. Of course, that was a lot slower than just doing this. Vitamelange, like the other resources, required several steps in its production chain, crushing into nuggets, growing into blooms, sucking out the spice, and extracting the extract. With Vitamelange on rockets and heading back to Norvis, it was time to make our science, and at this point, it's getting a little repetitive. To make all 4 sciences, we need 16 different data cards. Those are combined into catalogs, then insight, significant data, and science packs. Bioscience was somewhat annoying in that it uses about 5 million different fluids, but I did figure it out and got it all automated. In about 15 hours. I haven't felt the warmth of a woman in years. And with that, we had finished all of the mid-game science packs. And to sweeten the deal even more, once I finished Bioscience 4, I found this technology. The Plague. So I researched the Plague and built a building to produce the Plague. And once the Plague was produced, Ben and I took it down to Norvis and gave it a go.
3, 2, 1, go. Oh, I don't know. Oh, yes. I see. There's a radius of trees getting destroyed. Look, the trees.
Oh, yeah.
Yo. Yeah, they just spontaneously die.
One single plague rocket is capable of wiping out all life on an entire planet. Every tree, biter nest, fish, even friend.
No! Friend! No! No! What have we done, Ben? What have we done?
What have we done?
No!
Friend corpse.
Friend corpse. That's so fucked up.
Several minutes of intense lag later, the planet had been cleared. The war was over, the biters had lost, and the fish and trees were a worthy sacrifice. Well, kinda. We'd been making use of fish to extract microplastics from them. Without fish, the microplastic extraction machine would lay dormant for the rest of time. So, with the war won, it was time to get our hands on some naquium and automate those last 4 science packs. Naquium is a resource that can't be found on any planet. Its only presence in the entire galaxy lies in deep space asteroid fields, far, far away from any sunlight. To cross this vast distance, we needed to build a new nuclear-powered ship with a slightly funny shape. With that built, we set off, flying past the moons of Norvis, through the asteroid belts, out of the solar gravity well, and into deep space. Further out than we'd ever traveled before. I'd picked out the closest asteroid field, Shattered Skies, which was a 20-minute flight. So while I waited, I watched Tristan.
I've got hoes. I got hoes.
Landing at the asteroid field, a profound solitude descended. Only I, fragments of celestial debris, and the immense, echoing void separating this desolate perch from home. Or something like that, I don't know. I was here to exploit this place's mineral resources. So I found the closest patch of naquitite, mined it, crushed it, and shipped it back home. Back at Norvis orbit, I loaded the crushed naquitite on a train and shipped it down to the surface to begin processing. Predictably, refining naquium into ingots is the longest, most tedious production chain in the entire game. And this time, let's not just gloss over it. I want you to truly understand how deep this shit goes. So, we begin the process with crushed naquitite, and we turn that crushed naquitite into refined naquitite by combining it with beryllium hydroxide, blue exchange beads, and cryonite slush. Cryonite slush is easy, blue exchange beads are easy, but beryllium hydroxide is an intermediate in beryllium production that is currently only being made on Dionysus. So over to Dionysus I went, adding another rocket and shoving it full of beryllium hydroxide. Which is what I would have done if beryllium hydroxide wasn't a liquid. So I added beryllium sulfate to the rocket instead, shipped that to Norvis, refined it into beryllium hydroxide, and bang, we've got our refined naquitite. And that's just step 1. Step 2, naquium powder. Crushed naquitite plus holmium cable plus vitalic acid plus red exchange beads. The refined naquitite recipe actually turns its blue exchange beads into red exchange beads, but not enough to be useful. Just enough to be annoying. So we make some of those, ship in our vitalic acid and holmium cable, and bam, we've got naquium powder. They also turn their red exchange beads back into blue exchange beads, so we've got to route those back to where they're needed. And now, step 3. Naquitite crystals, taking the products of step 1 and 2 and adding some vitalic reagent. And finally, naquium ingots, taking all the products from steps 1, 2, and 3, adding some pyroflux and methane gas. I don't have any methane gas. So back to the asteroid field I went, mined some methane ice, which is really just solid fart, shipped the solid fart back to orbit, on a train, down to Norvis, melted into gaseous fart, and finally, we have the very last resource. Naquium. But did you think we were done? Sorry, fucko! Refined naquitite and naquium powder produce fuck-ass byproducts, namely beryllium powder and holmium powder. Can you guess how we deal with them? If you guessed throw it in the fucking creek, you'd be right. Well done. It took me so long to finish the naquium setup that the energy beams on Electo switched off. Their purpose had been completed, and the entire planet was now cleared. So what can we do with this naquium? You guessed it, fucko, we can make more science packs! Woo! Deep Space Science 1 needed more probe data, this time from an interstellar asteroid field, but was otherwise quite easy. Yeah! And Deep Space Science 2 was also quite easy. The sciences were quite easy, but we'd be needing a lot of these sciences. This wonderful naquium ingot production was fast enough, but it was severely lacking in crushed naquitite. Shattered Skies, our closest asteroid field, was just not cutting that fucking mustard. So to find a better asteroid field, we politely asked the telescope gnomes to look out for anything of interest in deep space. Melancholia? What we did not anticipate them finding, however, was this. Telescope data analysis discovered a new anomaly, Phonestra. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't anywhere on the star map, and looking at it with the satellite uplink presented more questions than it answered. I had to go look, and we'd just built the next generation in zoomy spaceships, this one powered by antimatter. On the flight over, I realized that I could make the ship's name pretty long, and even longer, and even longer. What the fuck? Once we left the solar gravity well, we disappeared off the map. And soon enough, we'd arrived. Presumably, this was some sort of broken Stargate, and after picking up and piecing this thing back together, it did indeed look very Stargate-like. To finish building it, we'd need a naquium processor, which we couldn't make yet. It seemed for the time being, we could go no further. But whatever this thing was, I was gonna get to the bottom of it. Naquium processors require Deep Space Science 3, and Deep Space Science 3 requires yet another new resource. That's right, I've lied to you. Naquium is not the final resource. Arcospheres are the final resource. And if you thought Naquium was complicated, Naquium is fucking goo goo gaga baby shit. Arcospheres are so much worse. First off, to get our hands on arcospheres, we launch arcosphere collector probes in a deep space asteroid field. We then stick these blank arcospheres into a machine that turns them into one of the 8 different Greek letters. These Greek lettered arcospheres never get consumed, only change from one letter to another. And this is where it gets fucky. For example, let's use these arcospheres on space dilation data. It takes zeta and omega and spits out phi and lambda. Run this recipe a few times and we're out of zeta and omega arcospheres. I think you can see the problem here. To turn the now plentiful phis and lambdas back into the input arcospheres, we use one of the 8 different arcosphere folding recipes. Of course, it's not as easy as turning one arcosphere into another. Arcosphere folding only lets you do 2 at a time. And this is the really fucky part. So, our goal is simple. Design a machine that can bring an uneven amount of arcospheres back into equilibrium. In this example, we've got 160 total arcospheres. There are 8 types, 160 divided by 8 is 20, so equilibrium means there are 20 of each. This is what we want, but this is what we have. So how do we get there? This letter, Xi, has 31 arcospheres, which means it's 11 away from equilibrium. Gamma is 4 away from equilibrium, Epsilon is 3 away, Zeta is at equilibrium, Lambda is 3 away, Theta is 4, Omega is 4, and Phi is 7 away from equilibrium. Add all these numbers together and we get a total distance to equilibrium of 36. 36 is this current state's score, and the closer the score is to 0, the closer to equilibrium the whole system is. Now, we can be a little smart and run a simulation of each recipe. For example, this one, -1 Xi and -1 Zeta, which gives us +1 Theta and +1 Phi. Run our little function again, find the distance from equilibrium, add those distances together, and we get 34. 34 is a lower score than 36, which means the state is closer to equilibrium. So, we do that recipe. Do this over and over and over again, each time blowing our score a little, and eventually we reach equilibrium. And here's that machine in Factorio. Each of these constant combinators is one of the different folding recipes. This block calculates the score based on the recipe, we compare all the scores from each recipe, and whichever one has the lowest result, we do that. Of course, this machine is a bit more complicated than that, and if you want to know more details, pause now and read. And voila, we have balanced arcospheres. If I take away all the phi's, the system will account for this and balance it all out. Yippee! Now that we had balanced arcospheres, came Deep Space Science 3, which was easy. All the data cards literally just used arcospheres. With Deep Space Science 3 automated, Deep Space Science 4 was now available. The very last science pack in the entire game. The end was in sight, and like all the other sciences, it needed 4 different data cards. Wormhole data, easy. Teleportation data, easy. Reality hypergraph analysis data, easy. And interstellar travel data, the hardest data card in the entire game. It's made in a Nexus on a spaceship traveling in interstellar space. The catch? The Nexus runs on several gigawatts. This called for building a new, faster, bigger, more powerful spaceship. Behold, the most powerful ship in the Bean Boys Incorporated fleet. The Chungus. Out in deep space, I wasted no time getting her up to speed and shoving her full of data cards. Each flight could net us a bounty of several thousand interstellar travel data. Enough for several thousand science, which in turn was enough to research the final technology. Oh my god. Last science pack is done. Spaceship Victory. And for our Spaceship Victory, we would need a ship even bigger than the Chungus. 3 layers of shields, 6 reactors, 14 heat exchangers, 8 condenser turbines, circuit logic, the Nexus, and enough engines to reach light speed. Gentlemen, behold the Shitfuck 2. Using the immense power of ballsack reactors, this baby was the most powerful craft ever created. The ship worked, all the systems were functional, it was time to begin that final flight. We flew out of Norvis's gravity well, past the asteroid belts, into deep space, and powered up the Nexus.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rip. That was it.
Hooray!
Hooray!
So, that was it. All of space exploration had been No. It couldn't end like this. What about the Stargate, and the pyramids, and all the weird shit? This was the coward's way out. The easy way out. And after 3 years of Factorio space exploration, the easy way out was unacceptable. Gentlemen, I was going to open that portal. But little did I know, this decision would completely break me. With Deep Space Science 4 came the ultimate impersonal transportation, the portal gun. With Nacrium processor in hand, I shoved all the necessary ingredients into the machine and it built a control panel. The control panel wanted 10 gigawatts, so I gave it 10 gigawatts. Activating each of these nodes drew another 10 gigawatts each, so I gave them 10 gigawatts each. 90 gigawatts total. It wanted supercooled thermofluid. I gave it supercooled thermofluid. It wanted dimensional anchors in orbit of 8 stars. I built dimensional anchors, powered them with 60 fucking gigawatts each, and finally, the machine was ready. So I keyed in the symbols, and nothing. All that work, 3 years, 500 hours of Factorio, it was all just set up for the final boss. The Stargate puzzle. The very first thing I noticed was this destroyed spaceship that I somehow missed. Reading through the ship's log, it contained some interesting information. It came from another Stargate, Thyrus, to here, Fonestra. But something went wrong and it exploded. And as it exploded, it jettisoned an escape pod to Norvis. Hey, wait a minute, that's me! I kept reading and found coordinates. These 3 very precise numbers which form a 3-dimensional vector. Graphing this vector looked like this. This vector looked familiar, because when I punched in random symbols and ran the Stargate, it also produced a 3-dimensional vector pointing this way. Reading through the log more carefully, this vector pointed from the Stargate Thyrus to Fonestra. So flipping this vector would point it from this Stargate back to Thyrus. Gentlemen, this was our target. All we had to do was find the right combination of symbols that produced this number. That, however, was easier said than done. I tried a bunch of random dialing to no avail. Each combination produced a totally different vector. Sometimes I get lucky and dial something close, but the target vector was so precise that there was almost no chance of getting it right by accident. It was time for more investigation. Nearly 200 hours ago, we walked into this pyramid on Agni. It contained these symbols, the same ones that were now before me on the Stargate. Checking the planet list, there were 59 more pyramids that I hadn't visited, each with its own symbol, each filled with biters, and each on a different planet. So I built a new ship named the Womb Raider, what the fuck, and searched all 60 pyramids, taking a screenshot of every symbol. Bringing the screenshots into Photoshop, I interrogated them closely and started noticing patterns. In this top big circle, I could treat each symbol like a triangle and fit them together into this, the net of a 3D shape with 60 triangular faces. This shape is called a pentachus dodecahedron, and we had just assigned a symbol to each of its faces. But this didn't really help. More investigation. The bottom circle. These small triangles down here also fit together into a bigger triangle with its top, left, right, and middle missing. And this is where I made another discovery. The Stargate doesn't have 60 symbols on it. It has 64. Placing the missing symbols on the triangle completed it, subdividing into 64 smaller triangles, each with its own symbol.
What? I'm looking at my schizophrenic diagrams, and they're not telling me anything.
Okay, but I still didn't know what this meant. So I kept investigating, and I kept noticing things. It seemed that the direction the resulting vector pointed in was almost entirely determined by what I put in the first node, which gave me an idea. What if that pentachus dodecahedron was this first node, and the next node was our triangle, and the next one a triangle within that triangle, and on until the last node. So I ran some tests. Dialing two symbols that were next to each other on the pentachus dodecahedron produced two vectors that were close together. Then dialing a symbol followed by all the top, then left, and right symbols, when graphed, formed its own triangle. This was it. All I had to do was find where that target vector was pointing in the pentachus dodecahedron, then which mini triangle it points to, then which mini triangle within that mini triangle, until all 8 nodes were dialed. But this presented a new problem. The target vector was precise. Really, really precise. And using this little graphing web app, soon enough, I wouldn't know if we were getting closer or further away. But this is where I had a true stroke of brilliance. Writing some code. But Mart, you don't know how to code. This is true. But I know something that does. With my newly created program, slowly but surely, I found the next symbol, then the next one, and the next one, until finally I had the entire combination. All 8 symbols ready to be dialed, and the game ready to be won. I got the boys on the server one last time, went down to pick up Tristan, and holy fucking shit, Tristan, oh my god! And before I knew it, we were ready.